Hello and welcome to another video showing you how to get the very top grades even if you're currently at a grade 3 or a 4. This video will help you jump by at least 2 grades. Let me explain how. Imagine your exam question was this: write a story suggested by this picture. Or it could be write a description suggested by this picture. Either one will not matter. I'm going to show you using the work of a viewer, Marian Amid. If you would like me to do a video on your work, just post it in the comments below and I'll take a look at it. Now he says, "Hi sir, I've been practicing creative writing for his mock in December as it stresses me out the most of all, my English language questions." This is, by the way, a superb way to revise. Notice that Marian isn't practicing the questions he knows he's good at. He's practicing the ones that cause him stress that he knows he's not good at. That is the sign of a student who's going to do superbly. This is my first time writing about fantasy. Full marks again, that's what revision looks like. I'm going to do something uncomfortable to get myself even more skilled. I'm going to write about fantasy, which I haven't done before. And then finally, the last element that makes Marian a fantastic student is he says this: "Can you please tell me how I could improve?" And that's what top students do. They're always looking for ways to get better. This is Marian's first line. "It was dark inside the wolf." I can't tell you how excited I was when I saw this line. One, I have never ever seen it before. It is brilliant. It could mean that the wolf is a dark creature with evil intent, or it could mean the narrator is actually inside the wolf. Now, both of those are just brilliant ways of getting the reader gripped with the very first sentence. It takes something that we're commonly associate with a wolf, like a Little Red Riding Hood story we're expecting, or a werewolf story, and suddenly we're inside the wolf. It's brilliant, brilliant writing. Now what I'm going to show you is actually quite short. It's only about 350 words, and different examiners will have different views on that. So what I can tell you is that it is at least a grade 7. I don't think there's an examiner in the country that would give it lower than that. Some would give it an 8 and some would give it a 9. I personally would give it an 8 and I'll explain to you why. Let's go and see the rest of it. Red Riding assessed the situation with cold, calculating eyes, all the while breathing fervently through her mouth. The smell inside was literally to die for. It was evident that this was a situation of magic that pure, steely logic could simply not resolve. How did she know, I hear you ask? Because the creature had no inside. She was stuck in a warm shell that was empty inside, and not figuratively. Years of intense training kicked in as her brain whirred into action. A magical wolf, yes, her grandmother had warned her against those. She remembered sitting as a child in the secret cellar gifted by her great-great-grandfather to his beloved wife, an anniversary gift perhaps. She remembered wrinkling her nose at the organs suspended eerily in a vile green solution, arranged systematically in neat rows, and she remembered despising it. Let's look at the skill that I think you need to make automatic, and it's this one of varying your sentences. And the first easiest way to do that is to vary the first word of each sentence. So I've highlighted those in yellow for you so you can see what's going on here. Read, it, how, because, she, years, a, she, and. So it's fine to have the odd bit of repetition, especially if it's for effect. So far we've had 2 its and 3 she's, but the other sentences begin in different ways. Now I'm going to show you the rest of the story before we read it, just to check on that skill. Well, in the next bit we have 3 single word sentences, each with a different word, every single bit. Girl, she, yes, Rosalind, she, 2 and 4. And then the ending, good, she, ha, struggling, or no, she, the, she, and. So you can see there is a bit of repetition going on, but it's not boring. That would be one little tip that I'd give you in your revision. Try not to overuse the same sentence start. In this case, it's the personal pronoun she. For you, it might be he, whatever it is. Try not to overuse that. This isn't so repetitive that it's boring. It's still really engaging, especially as there are lots of other interesting ways to start sentences that are unpredictable. Starting with a verb, ha. Twice I think you've started with and, which makes it a break from convention, which is always interesting. And then you have this elite little bit of one-word sentences, which students rarely do, and having 3 of them emphasizes the thought in the girl's mind every single bit. It forces you to read it in that way, and that's super sophisticated. Okay, we left the story at the moment that Riding Hood was remembering being disgusted by this secret cellar with the vile green solution and the body parts in it. Let's find out what happens in the rest of the story. So she was disgusted by every single bit. Girl, her grandmother's voice rang hoarse in her mind. When encountered by a wolf plagued by filth, you must kill it. She ignored the innocent child's widening eyes and continued. Yes, it contains within it a human soul punished for its greeds. Rosalind Red Riding, as a huntress of the wolves of the ancient world, it is your duty to kill them all. Kill and release the soul within. She smiled at the excitement and wonder this revelation had filled her with all these years ago. To be born a huntress, the supposed elite of society. For some reason the gene always skipped her generation, which meant her silly, foolhardy mother could not inherit it. Good. She was a foolish woman and an advocate for the well-being of wolves and humans alike. Ha! If only she knew. Struggling to rip off her cloak, she shrugged on the warm interior of the creature and giggled to herself. She was like a sheep in wolf's clothing, or was it a wolf in sheep's clothing? No matter. She had never asked to be a huntress. The old witch was wrong. She was a wolf through and through, and now the real fun was going to begin. Okay, I'm going to talk you through some things that make this a top piece of writing, general things that describe the whole piece before we zoom in on particular parts like we did with the words here. Right, the first thing you've got to think about is the cliffhanger here. And now the real fun was going to begin. Cliffhangers are usually a lazy way for students to say, whoops, my time's up in the exam and I don't know what to write next. But a skillful cliffhanger gets the reader to anticipate what will happen next. In other words, it's not just an ending, it's an ending which suggests what the further actions will be. And you can see here how well he's done this. We know what the real fun is going to be. She's going to become a killer, probably hunting down other huntresses. And we infer that just from the actions that have already happened. That is a brilliant, brilliant cliffhanger. One that works because it tells us really where the story would go next. And therefore, because we already know where it would go next, it's not the important part of the story. The important part of the story is this moment of realization, this change when she realizes she's no longer hunting wolves, but becoming a wolf to hunt the hunters. Okay, the other bit of genius in here is that this story could easily have come from this picture. We have the colour red in it and we have a female main character. Now what's even more impressive about this for you is that Marian had never seen this picture when he wrote this story. Now the reason I'm showing you that is I had made a video based on this picture, and this is what will happen in the exam. When you get a picture, it's easy to adapt your idea to it. So you can go into the exam already knowing that you're going to write some variation of Little Red Riding Hood or the Three Little Pigs. you can actually go into the exam knowing that you will probably be able to fit this idea into whatever the story writing is. Now, of course, that can't be your only plan. It just has to be your backup plan. If you've got an idea that you particularly love and you've tried out in your revision, have it as an idea that you might be able to use in the exam. Why not? It's not cheating. You've crafted this piece like Marian has, and you can therefore bring that craft into the exam. And of course, when you write it under exam conditions, it won't be exactly the same. And even if it were, it wouldn't matter. Right, the next most important feature of your writing after having a variety of sentence starting are the verbs you choose. The verbs are the engines that drive your writing. You can either have a 1 litre engine that will get a Fiat, tiny little Fiat around, or you can have a 3 litre engine that's going to accelerate your Porsche off into the distance. And so here we have Porsche writing. Assessed. This shows us what a calculating mind Red Riding has, which is going to be so important to the ending and what she plans to do. And so we can see this is the mind of a thinker, but also an assassin. She's breathing. That is a really interesting choice of verb. Normally, why would you point out that somebody's breathing? Because we do it automatically. So the fact that the author is highlighting that suggests that time is going to slow down and that breathing is important, either because there's going to be a lack of breath or an acceleration in it, and that adds drama to the writing. Then we have this idea of resolving the problem, and so we can see what's going on in this character's head. She is assessing a situation and trying to resolve it. She's got a problem and we're going to find it solved in the next bit of writing. It's a brilliant way to make us think, well, what is going to happen next? Another brilliant way is talking directly to the reader, and that comes through the verbs know, hear, and ask. And having lots of verbs in one sentence is a way of giving urgency to your writing. Then we just have the verb to be. I'll ignore those. But she was stuck in a warm cell, and this gives us an idea of her mental state. If we had just said she is in a warm cell, it wouldn't give us that mental state. So the actual verb tells us a lot about the character. Similarly, years of intense training. The writer Marian could have said she remembered years of intense training, but no. He's chosen a much more violent verb. The training kicked in. Now that's a common expression for us, but it's also violent and it fits perfectly. Again, her brain suddenly thought of blah, 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 gives us an idea of speed, but word is a much more powerful way of giving us that idea of speed, and also gives us the incredible speed of thought which she has, which makes us suspect she will be an excellent assassin and get away with everything. Then this is contrasted with her grandmother, and the grandmother comes across as a kind of cruel creature. She warned Red Riding Hood, not in a good way, as we'll see later. Now we can see this pattern of conflicting characters. The grandmother is going to become an enemy, and perhaps when we get to the cliffhanger, we might infer that Red Riding Hood is going to kill her grandmother. We'll see. Next, I want you to notice the repetition of the word remembered, 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 remembered. Now that doesn't happen by accident. You might think, oh, doesn't that make the writing boring? No, it doesn't. The reason that this is effective, well, there are two actually. One is it tells the examiner, look, I'm writing a flashback here. Now that's important. Examiners give more marks if you use a flashback. But I'm not just interested in passing the exam, I'm interested in really good writing. So why is it also really good writing? Well, because the flashback gives us her motives for changing. This is going to give us Red Riding Hood's motive for now attacking the huntresses, what she thought she was. She's turning on her old identity. And the repetition of remembered emphasizes how this is a really important turning point in her own memory. She's looking back on it and realizing that from this moment everything has changed. Now, we can go back to the description of her looking at the organs that are suspended, okay? She was wrinkling her nose. Now, that's a brilliant verb because it gives us the idea of her rejection of the organs, but look a little closer. Wrinkling her nose is also an animal-like action. You know, watch a dog. It will wrinkle its nose all the time every time you take it out for a walk. It's what a wolf will do. And this is really subtle, isn't it? It's giving us a foreshadowing, if you like, of how she's going to be more wolf-like. Now, the other verbs, how these organs have been suspended and arranged, these are verbs that the grandmother has done. And so this portrays the grandmother as an enemy, someone who's suspended the things that Riding Hood finds disgusting to display them and make her look at them, and also arrange them in a way which is cold and calculating. And so it appears that the grandmother has done something to really anger Red Riding Hood. Of course she hasn't. She thinks Red Riding Hood is a huntress who will want to kill wolves and therefore love seeing these things, bits of dead wolf. But no, it's going to be the other way around, and that's what makes this really powerful. Okay, I won't do all the other verbs, but I'll stop here. Her grandmother's voice rang hoarse in her mind, and this word rang is a sound that's not welcome, but it's also something that we associate with a warning. The bell is rung in warning, and therefore it brings us back to the idea that Red Riding Hood doesn't like her grandmother now that she's looking back. It's really, really interesting. And then we've got this idea of the wolf being plagued by filth. The word plagued shows that it's a disease that needs to be killed. Really powerful. But doubly powerful when Red Riding Hood uses it because it means that she's thinking she herself is treated like a plague, and that therefore gives her the justification for turning around and slaughtering other people at the end of the story. Then this description of Riding Hood's widening eyes shows that she is amazed at what her grandmother is telling her. Now that works because her grandmother is telling her that she's going to be a huntress. This is brilliant news. But in retrospect, when we get to the end of the story, it works in another way. It suggests that she's horrified. Part of her is horrified by this thought because deep down, even then she knew that she was not a killer of wolves, but a wolf who was a killer. So really, really powerful use of verbs, which make me really excited as a reader. So there are dozens of things I could show you in that writing, but that would make a video that was super long. Let's just jump into the Marc Scheme and see what's brilliant about the writing and also what could be improved. So the marker starts with the stuff at the top. Communicate clearly, absolutely. Effective and imaginative, definitely. Adapting a tone, well, it definitely had a tone, didn't it? You felt Riding Hood's voice all the way through, and that meant she chose the right language to speak to us in. I say she, Red Riding Hood, obviously it was actually Marian who chose that. Is it in different forms? Well, damn right it is. Marian's taken a fairy story and changed it into something much more sinister. Did it have a clear purpose? Damn right it did. Marian was showing us how this character, this turning point in this character, is explaining how she turned from one kind of innocent child into a hunter and then changed again into a hunter of hunters, if you like, okay? And is it suited to its audience? Yes, of course it is. It depends on the audience knowing something about Red Riding Hood, and it plays with our expectations brilliantly. Is it organised? Well, yes, you can see the paragraphs, even the one sentence paragraphs. Is it using structure? Well, I've shown you that with the way it was paragraphed and the way that sentences started in a different way, the way it had flashback. Yeah, all those things are structural features. Was the grammar right? Yes, it was. I haven't really shown you that. And does it have coherence? In other words, does it all fall together? Well, that's interesting because I gave it a grade 8 when I started this because I thought I'd found a weakness. Here's the weakness I thought I'd found. She smiled at the excitement and wonder this revelation had filled her with all these years ago. So that for me undermined the story. If it was so exciting to become a huntress, it couldn't suddenly be exciting to stop being a huntress and kill huntresses. That didn't make sense to me then. But I go back to the next line. To be born a huntress, the supposed elite of society. Now that in retrospect does make sense of this decision. So she's excited because society expects her to be excited about this. It's an honour to be a huntress. And now later, when she's inside the wolf, she is suddenly surprised to find that actually that excitement is nowhere near the excitement she now has, that she's still a huntress, but a hunter not of wolves, but of the huntresses of wolves. So now I've changed my mind. I'm now going up to a grade 9 because of that. Now that doesn't mean it is a grade 9, and it doesn't mean it's definitely a grade 8, okay? And the reason why is the examiners aren't given definitions of what grade 8 and 9 are. Instead, they're just asked to use this to give it a mark, and then at the end, when all the marks are totaled up, a certain percentage are given 9 and a certain percentage are given 8, okay? And about 18% are given a 7 or above. Right, let's look at the skills that the examiner will also look at. They'll read this. Once they've read that bit, they'll read from left to right. Is it compelling and convincing? Yes, that idea was sustained throughout and I wanted to find out more. Therefore, it was compelling. And did it convince me? Yes, I was convinced by this character and this magical world. Was it assuredly matched to purpose? We talked about that earlier. Does it have lots of crafting of linguistic devices? Well, that's where this video could be much longer when I talked you through all of those. A good revision tip for you will be to go back and see if you can spot them for yourself. You know, what techniques can you see in there? That will be a brilliant way for you to revise. I'm not going to tell you now because it's a long video already. Does it have varied and inventive structural features? Well, you've got the flashback in there, and just having a flashback alone will give that to you, but you've also got the way that sentences are varied, particularly those one-word sentences. So definitely you've got that. Are the paragraphs fluently linked? Yes, they are. You can't put those paragraphs in a different order. They have to go in the order that they're in, otherwise it wouldn't make sense. Often you'll find in students writing that you can get rid of one paragraph and it would actually be better, but not here. So let's go back. Here's a typical picture that you might get in the exam, and you can prepare a story that you want to write, an idea that you want to write, and make it fit the picture. Now remember, that's not your only tactic. You're going to have a range of ideas when you go into the exam, and you don't have to have any. You could just go in with a blank piece of paper, so long as you've practiced writing descriptions and stories well enough. Now the final point to consider is, well, that's great, Mr. Salles, but what if the picture said I had to write a description and there was no story option? How would I be able to use Marian's story idea? That's a really good question. Well, in that case, you would write exactly the same thing. It would be exactly the same. It would be this moment inside the wolf where she's deciding she's now going to become a killer. But instead of doing this in flashback, she would look around the room and see things now. So you would just keep your writing in the present tense. So you'd see exactly the same things. You would be in this room, but you wouldn't do this as a flashback. You would do this as a description now and how those things now affect your mind. Why would that not be a story? Well, because these thoughts happen over the space of potentially 30 seconds. You know, nothing's going to happen in those 30 seconds. And if we get to the end of the story, all the things that are going to happen haven't happened yet. You've still got the flashback. So this would still be a perfect, sorry, not the flashback. You've still got the cliffhanger that invites us to see what's going to happen in the future. So just by getting rid of the flashback, but including all the same words, apart from the flashback, you would be able to get the grade 8 or 9. The only reservation that you might have is that 349 words isn't a lot, you might say, to write in a 45 minutes of your exam, or even 50 minutes. Well, that's true, but what the examiners keep telling us every year is that students who write too much end up writing worse. And what they really want is quality above quantity. So actually, I think this would qualify. 350 words would be brilliant as a piece that would get you top marks. It's at the lower end. You'd have to be a brilliant writer to get so much information about the character and their thoughts in such a short space of time, but you can see how to do it. And why not start here? Why not start with Marian's first line and just vary the word dark and wolf until you come up with a sentence which is equally surprising, where we don't expect it to be whatever it is, light, cold, hot, inside something that we didn't normally associate you being inside of. So a fabulous, fabulous technique. I hope you've learned lots from it. If you want more, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want me to mark your work, why not post it in the comments below? Thank you very much for watching. See you soon on my channel.